Imagine if planning your financial future was as important as planning your next vacation. You wouldn't leave your dream trip to chance, so why leave your financial future up in the air? Today we're diving into why having a financial plan is not just a nice to have, but an absolute must. And to help us understand the ins and outs, we're joined by Denis Bisson, Portfolio Manager at TVH Wealth, who recently wrote a compelling blog post on this very topic. Denis is here to break down why financial planning is more than just investments. It's about securing your future. Let's get into it.
Well, I'd like to welcome everyone on this beautiful summer day, although we're starting to get less and less of those, so that's a little depressing, but I know.
Don't curse it.
We're talking about Kawartha Dairy ice cream and how awesome they are. So gonna need to enjoy a few more of those before the end of the season. But anyways, I want to invite everyone to the Money Mindset and Mastery podcast. I'm Jim, your host. Joining me today is my host or co-host Ryan. Ryan, how are you today?
It's been a while since we've got together and chatted, and in my head I have the Sesame Street or Kermit the Frog singing "Together Again," do, 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 together again. But that's just aging myself as far as that. Anyway, moving on to
moving on.
Bigger and more exciting things that we're talking about today.
Yeah, well, that's because we have Kermit joining us today, Denis Bisson of TV. How you doing, Denis?
We're doing fine in the office today.
We can see that for anyone who's viewing us today. We're going to be talking about a topic that actually I think Ryan and I have discussed in some previous episodes, but it's based on a blog post, Denis, that you recently wrote that we're going to be posting by the end of this week. And it's titled "Why You Need a Financial Plan," and it's more than just investments. And I really like this topic, and the reason why I say that I like this topic is a lot of times we do talk to our clients about setting up a retirement plan or a financial plan, and a lot of people think that a financial plan is just getting some money and putting it into an investment for the future. And there's really so much more than that. A financial plan is really more than that. So we're going to go through why someone should set up a financial plan. I think what we should probably do, though, Denis, because I've had people ask me this, like, what's a financial plan? How is it different than a retirement plan or an education savings plan? So maybe we can start off with you explaining what is a financial plan. And I'll also remind people that this is coming from Denis, who's also a certified financial planner. So what is a financial plan, Denis?
Well, basically, it's a blueprint to all your financial needs from the point you started till retirement and death. It has all the details of how you're going to deal with your finances, revenues coming in, expenses, future revenues, gains, losses. It also includes insurance, estate plan. It's just everything that can possibly touch your finances from the time you put it together till death.
And is it written in stone, Denis?
It is not written in stone. The one thing that's clear about a financial plan is you probably should meet with your advisor, especially when you first do a financial plan. It's, you're new to it. Your mindset is not there yet. You're not thinking, perhaps, forgot a few things. So it's good to review a financial plan every year. One, to make sure you're on track, and two, to make adjustments and then find out, what does it look like now after the adjustments. Everybody has life events, whether it's a birth, death, change of employment, anything like that, loss of employment, and it needs to be adjusted. Your plan does need to be adjusted for the, I wouldn't say disruption of income, but really that's what it is, and potentially increase in expenses because you had, you need your roof replaced, you need a new car, and you don't want to borrow, so you want to pay cash, you take it out of your savings. So that will change your financial plan. So it's an ongoing thing, a living document, if you like that term.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when talking with clients too is, giving a description of what a financial plan, it just simply isn't about the investment piece. But I find talking with people on the streets and just not trying to get them to talk more about the finances, but just their understanding what a financial plan is. But I find a lot of resistance with it. And what do you think is creating the resistance for people to sit down and actually create a financial plan?
Well, one of the things, it does take a lot of work to start one. So you got to bring all your expenses. You got to monitor your expenses just so you could put that on paper to see what you spend a month. You got to put all your revenues, and that's when you find out where you spend all your money. And then the financial plan may bring out a few other things. Oh, perhaps you're lacking insurance, whether it's life, disability, critical illness. That is also part of financial plan. So it's a lot of things. It adds structure to a person's financial life. Some people love structure. Some people are a little don't want like structure, because you commit when you're investing in the plan. This is where the investments come in. You commit to potentially contributing every month without fault. Otherwise, the financial plan is not worth much if you're not going to follow what you're saying you're going to do to get to your goal of being retired and being able to spend a certain amount of money. So structure and really getting a lot of things done. When you're doing life insurance, there's questionnaires, there's potential blood tests, depending on the health, your health and everything else. And it all comes out for every member of the financial plan. Because it's not usually, if you have a wife and kids, that's part of the financial plan. Because if you have kids, it's going to be education savings as well. And potentially in the end, for the full financial plan, there are beneficiaries. So you would think they're beneficiaries. That could always change. But they're beneficiaries as part of the, they're part of the plan as well. So it's a lot of involvement. It's a lot of, when you're sitting down with a financial advisor, you're just giving all your information. That's there's a little reluctance on that, giving all your information to someone so they could put this together. So you need to have that trust with the advisor, and you need to be ready to do it. If you don't participate and you don't contribute, or you contribute and then you start taking money out, then a financial plan is not worth much.
Yeah, and I'll even add to that, Ryan. What I found throughout the years, why people are reluctant. First of all, some people basically will say, it's probably going to cost me a lot of money to set up a financial plan. Or I don't have enough assets and liabilities to justify going through the process of setting up a financial plan. So I know I've had that resistance from people. Going back to the data collection that you're referring to, Denis, like that's why usually we say to people, there's going to be a lot of heavy lifting in the first 2 or 3 months. Let's collect the data. Let's put in the time to collect it and put it again in your plan itself. And then after that, it becomes a lot easier because we have the information. It's just making some adjustments here or there. So I do know those are a couple of other reasons. And I also think how we present financial plans have evolved, and how we collect data from a financial plan has evolved. So we're definitely finding more people interested in going through the process, because the technology that we have in place now has made it easier. I'm sure you remember when we used to set up financial plans 10, 15, 20 years ago. It was, here's a spreadsheet, and, provide me with all these statements and all this information, and people have to provide like a stack of data that then we would physically take from them, and people weren't comfortable providing that information that way because they didn't want to lose their documents. So we'd have to scan it and whatever else, manually input it into the program. And then we would present a book, right, of here's your financial plan. And it was very intimidating for a lot of people. So it's definitely evolved over the years. Data collection, now we use a program like Planworth. We send an easy link and it walks people through. So it's a lot easier process. If we require backup documentation, we'll let them know. And we have a way for them to provide us that information by uploading the information to us. And then when we present the plan, they have a live portal where they can actually log in somewhere and see where their full plan as well. And they don't have to worry about reading a novel, right, of all their information. So I think those are some of the reasons why people have been nervous or resisted it. But now that's slowly shifting as well.
Well, I think
and the information we gather sometimes. I know when I first started out doing plans, we were getting every little detail on what they spend a month and then calculating. Well, in the end, we only really need one number. What is the total expense? So if you don't want to share somewhere where you're spending it, you just give me the monthly number, and then that could be inputted, and that's all we need. Because in the end, that's what you're looking for when you're starting off a plan. What are your total monthly expenses, as accurate as it can be?
I was going to ask, I've had many clients ask the question, should I have a financial plan, and should my partner have a financial plan, or should we have one together? And I think there's a lot of debate and conversation that can happen around, why set up this financial plan for myself or the family? Do you guys have any insight of what you have recommended over the many years experience that you guys have?
Well, I first would say together. It doesn't mean everything's together. If you're sharing expenses, then it should be together because your expenses will increase and decrease equally if you're sharing expenses. So it doesn't mean everything has to be equal after that. You could have separate wills. You could do things if you're common law or something, or you're a blended family. You want to leave money to your kids from the first marriage. That could be separate and stay separate, but the plan should be together when there is sharing of expenses and when you're combining the income as well to pay those expenses.
Yeah, I find the success rate of putting a plan in place and actually following through with it is a lot higher when both of the couples are involved with the process. Now, what might happen is you might have one that's the lead, right, in providing all the data and the information. I've seen that happen, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the bottom line is it's like couples therapy. You can't have one of the two couples go through therapy to kind of fix the marriage, right? They both have to be involved in order for them to receive that success. It's the same thing with setting up a plan.
How young would you say somebody should start with a financial plan?
The sooner the better, right? I mean, that's my experience. When I've met with clients who at age 55 are saying, hey, I want a financial plan because I want to retire in 10 years and I want you to show me everything I need to do. And then you go through the planning process at that later stage in life. A lot of times they just don't have time to do what they need to do to achieve some of those goals, right? So then they're looking for a magician to create some magic, and that's impossible, right? So the sooner the better. And it's also a way of educating people too about finances and investing.
Yeah, and when you start younger, you're putting structure in place. Now, if you're 30, retirement may be very long time away, but at least you're putting structure in place. You're saving. You have somewhat of a target, with CPP, OAS, and then potential RSPs. You know what your plans are at work if you do have a defined contribution, defined benefit if you're working for the government. There are certain other firms that still have that. It gives you an idea and its structure. If you start putting money aside monthly, it is a good start, and you will continue to do that up until you retire. Those that start late, it's a little more difficult. Those that are used to it and they see the growth in your accounts, that's the key. You're seeing the growth in your accounts. You know where it's leading. It's important.
But it's also important because when they see that, they can see what it translates to in terms of the goals that they've set up for themselves. I'll give you a recent example. I met with a client. We did a progress review on her retirement plan about a month ago. She's been a client of mine for a couple of years now. Going through the progress report, I was able to show her, hey, here's the goals that we've set out when we first met. Here are the projections. We're off track right now, slightly. It wasn't anything significant, not a huge impact. And I was able to show her the difference and then also walk through, here's what your accounts were all worth the last time we met. Here's what they're currently worth today. And at the end of it, she actually said to me, she's like, in all the years that I've been investing money, and prior to working with me, she was working with one of the big banks. I won't name them, but they have a green logo. And she said, never once did anybody at the bank ever say to her, hey, here's what the value of your accounts were the last time we met. Here's where you're at today. Here's the progress. Yeah. Or, they never asked her about retirement planning and her goals in retirement. It was always, you should set up an RSP and how much can you put in your RSP? Like that was the planning, right? So she was pleasantly surprised that we were able to go through that process with her. She was able to visualize it. And she knew that, okay, maybe we have to make some adjustments along the way. But she was able to see that. She's aware of that now. As opposed to kind of like the old days when we used to do this. We'd set up the plan. Again, it would be that big, huge book. And then it would be set aside and no one would look at it. And then maybe 5-6 years later, they're cleaning out their drawers or whatever else. And they pull out the financial plans like, oh, yeah. They blow the dust off of it and they look at it. And it's like, I wonder where things are at. And then they find out that they're nowhere close to what they'd originally projected because of some changes, right? So really important to set up a plan. And the other thing, too, is, like you said, Denis, it uncovers other gaps that people aren't even aware of. I don't know how many times Ryan and I have worked on one together for clients, and they don't understand that, they had a $2 million shortfall on life insurance. They bought, a small policy based on an insurance advisor suggesting they should have $250,000 of coverage without really illustrating the impact of either of the spouses passing away and the financial impact that would be on the family as well, right? Mm-hmm. So it definitely opens up a lot of people's eyes when we walk them through the process.
And you mentioned some institutions. It's not a one size fits all approach, right? Every individual is different, every family is different, every business is different, and making sure that somebody's being able to identify the potential risks. Essentially, we're risk managers for a large portion of it is what could potentially and how do we prevent, right? So
yeah, and I think too, when we specifically work on a retirement plan, one of the challenges that a lot of people do have is they don't know what retirement's going to cost. They don't know how much income they require. So that's some coaching that we do as well through the financial plan or retirement plan process, right? Is kind of giving them that feedback and identifying here are the expenses. And it'll change even in retirement. You have your early retirement years, or maybe some people might want to travel a lot more, and then they slow down. But then there might be mobility issues, and all of a sudden there's medical expenses that come up. And so these are things people don't really think about because it's still 20, 30 years away. But man, does it catch up to you really quickly, right?
Yeah, the education process is important. It also gets client buy-in at the same time. As they learn more, they know what you explain. As advisors, we try to explain everything, what we're doing and why. And as the client understands that, they buy into it and then they follow their plan. And that's when you're getting positive results.
Yeah. And my favorite part of when we walk through a plan is identifying some lost opportunity costs. When people are spending X amount of dollars on certain things that maybe aren't really necessary. And, we kind of project out, well, hey, if you eliminate that expense or if you adjust it and you redirect some of those funds into your retirement strategy, this is what that impact's going to be 20, 30 years from now. Everyone's always thinking about the immediate gratification. They're not really looking at the impact of some of those financial decisions 20 years down the road. Right? And that's our job. That's what we do. So let's talk about putting a financial plan and helping people with unforeseen events and the flexibility of a financial plan. You were talking about it's not a one size fits all, right, Ryan? Like you said. Yep. We need flexibility and we need some adjustments. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, why is a financial plan important to help people with dealing with some unforeseen events? Like, how do we help people with some of those situations?
I'll start on that one. The one thing a financial plan always has is an emergency fund. Sometimes it's a TFSA because you're tax-free when you take it out and you get that room back the following year. Or it's just actually a pool of money either in a bank account or a non-registered account. But always important to have some money assigned for emergencies. Sometimes even if you're insured, well, the insurance may not come tomorrow and you may need some funds available. Unforeseen expenses where you don't have to cash in an account, especially in RSP. You never want to take money out of the RSP before retirement because you're going to be taxed heavily and then it's going to be revenue on that year's tax return. So you need basically an emergency fund. And if there's no emergency, it just can continue growing for your retirement. If there is emergency, it's there. You could take some money out, deal with the unforeseen expense or missing revenue or whatever it is, and then move on after and then build it up again once that is, passed.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is, and I love John, who's our partner at TVH Mortgages, he always says to people, you need to have a backup to the backup to the backup. So you can have your emergency fund as part of the planning strategy, but if that runs out, and let's say you've run through your savings, your emergency savings because of an illness, for example. What's your backup plan beyond that? And then it's starting to liquidate assets. Well, part of the planning process would be, hey, if we had something like critical illness insurance, we don't have to tap into those assets, right? That critical illness will be injected into your plan. You can use those funds to kind of get you through that period of time. So it doesn't blow up your retirement plan in the future. So those are things that we identify. Disability coverage. What if you get hurt and you can't work? Most people don't understand or realize that the number one asset that we all have is our ability to earn income, but yet no one protects that. So that's something that we definitely help out and assist with when we put through that retirement plan or financial plan, right? I think the next one too is, we talked about how people have a hard time projecting out 20, 25 years from now in terms of retirement. They really don't understand the implications on what happens when they pass away. And they've worked so hard, they've built those assets. So, Ryan, why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because there is that one dashboard in our planning program that we love, which highlights this big, huge red number. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think the tax implications that you're often leaving to the next generation is one of the biggest things that people are missing out on. You talked about risk while you're alive. It's critical illness, but when you pass, life insurance strategies is where that comes into play, and making sure that we're able to, perhaps it's a house or a cottage or something like that within the family, and understanding ahead of time what those implications become and how we can relieve our family and leave potentially a better legacy for the next generation when it comes to preparing for that. And it is, I would say, probably the hardest conversation that you end up having with people is that estate planning, and then the huge eye opener about the tax piece, about what the government loves to take from us after we've worked so hard. Because we look at our assets and we think, well, that's all just going to my family member. Well, that's not true. Depending on how it's structured, your family, whether you're now single parents, things like that, it's all part of the estate planning. Even myself, I have a son. So what does that look like as far as the estate planning for him, and preparing, I would say, wills, powers of attorney? Have you had those conversations of perhaps a trust and how that's structured? Now, these are all large things, and we don't, again, I guess we were trying to keep this relatively short and informative, but at the same time, if you haven't sat down with your family members and had those conversations about what's going on with the end result, who gets what, how much is going to the government, it can be an eye-opener for a lot of people. And when working with a professional like ourselves, there's a way of making sure that there's money left to help take care of the tax implications, to help with the burial, the celebration of life, whatever it may be. And I would say it is very much the eye-opener with that big red number that people hate to see, that the government's reaching out at one last time before you pass, that we can help, not necessarily eliminate, but reduce the hurt on a lot of it.
Yeah, and some examples that I'll share. For example, I don't know how many times I've walked through clients through a retirement or financial plan, and the one question we ask part of the process is, do you have wills and powers of attorneys? It's amazing how many no's that I get from people. So it's not just a matter of, okay, well, they don't have a will, powers of attorney, let's move on. It's, you have a young family, the government will decide what happens if, you don't have this written down. So let us direct you to our partner who helps with setting up wills and powers of attorneys, right? So it's not just a matter of identifying those gaps, but it's also following through with helping people to make sure that they remove those gaps in their overall plan, right? So that's a really a big important one that we work with. On the retirement side or the estate side, it's amazing how many times I'd have clients say, well, I have lots of assets, so I don't need life insurance when I'm older. And it's like, okay, well, look at the tax bill. And the tax bill could be just from registered accounts, right? They don't understand how that gets taxed at death. It could be they've built a portfolio of rental properties and they don't realize there's a huge tax bill. And when you pass away, the government won't wait for you to sell those assets off. We want our money now, right? They got their little greedy little fingers in there. So how do you manage that? How do you fund for that, right? And my favorite one is when I come across clients who have dealt with a certain financial institution who says to them, you don't need permanent insurance. Just buy term insurance and put the rest of it and max out your RSP, because then you build your RSP to a certain point and you don't need this life insurance anymore. And then we show them the tax implication of that strategy at death. People are just blown away. They're like, I didn't realize that half of my RSP assets are going to go to CRA once I pass away if there's no surviving spouse. So these are all things that we do in going through the retirement plan. It's definitely an eye opener for a lot of people. Right?
To give you a number, 2023's number, 54% of Canadians do not have a will.
How many?
So 54% of Canadians do not have a will in place. And to add to that, the beneficiaries, I would say a lot of beneficiaries need to be updated as far as their accounts.
Well, that's a big one, right? I don't know. Again, a lot of people have group benefits, RSPs, whatever else, and I'll ask them for their statement. Not that we can make any recommendations necessarily, but what I'm looking for is the beneficiary designation. Mm-hmm. And I would say, well, you have your young children set up as a beneficiary. Here's the impact of doing it. You need to change that. Here's the reason why, right?
Yeah.
So we walk people through that process too. So that's very important, again, in putting together a plan for a lot of people, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Denis, is financial planning just for regular folk, or should people with small businesses get involved with financial planning as well? Is it more important for a business owner? Maybe kind of share a little bit of your perspective.
Yeah, I think as for business owners, everybody should have a plan. But as you have more assets, especially private assets, when it comes to a small business owner, it gets a little more complicated, which is why you need to set up a plan, and you need to have other professionals involved as well, lawyer, accountant. There's how are you going to dispose of your company if it's grown to a size that somebody could sell, take it over, and continue on. A lot of times, sole proprietors, it does not continue after the death, but a lot of companies, as you build it and you have start getting, employees, 5, 10, 20 plus employees, that's going to carry on after your death. So how do you do it? Do you have a buy-sell agreement in place where it just doesn't go to your spouse who's not really involved in the business and suddenly she's the owner? No, it's the current or the partners would end up taking it over with the buy-sell agreement. Is there an estate freeze where, for tax purposes, you are giving it to the growth shares, part of it, to your kids, and you're sitting back retirement and just collecting dividend income? So there's a state, there's some post-mortem strategies when you have a small business, the pipeline, loss carry back forward. I won't get into that because I'll just bore people. But there is a lot of planning to do. There's insurance to put in place too if you're doing any of these strategies to sell your business. And if you're giving it to everybody but still want your family members still want control, there's potential you could set up a family trust to hold the corporation, corporate shares within that, and still be we'll call it the trustee, and have control over the company. But the outcome is, after your death, the family trust will take place and those shares will be distributed. So it's a matter of there's a lot of planning. There's a lot of planning around as well, how you're going to pay yourself, salary or dividend. If it's dividend, obviously it's more tax efficient. If it's salary, it creates RSP room, potential for an IPP later on with the T4 income. So those are discussions we tend to have. And a lot of times I'll have these discussion with some clients who are starting the business just to get prepared on what to do. There's the small business capital gains exemption. They need to know that. How to distribute the ownership is important as well. If you're with a partner, should you keep it or should it be split 50-50? Well, we go through the pros and cons on that. There's definitely some pros, and if the partnership breaks up, then you'll see the cons as well. So there's a lot of discussions to be had for a small business owner. They retire as well. Is the sale of their business going to be their retirement nest egg? Are they keeping money within the corporation? And if you keep too much money within the corporation, which is considered passive income, well, that could affect your small gains exemption as well. So this is something we bring up, but we also work with the accountant and in some cases the lawyer to discuss in greater detail with the client of how important it is to have in place. That's why it's important to work with professionals. We're sort of the quarterback. We could deal with telling them what needs to be done, but on some of the details, the accountant, they have the financial statements in front of them. They're the ones that are going to say, okay, this is what we can do. And then, that's why you work as a team.
And I think that's a good point, the team aspect of it. And this is where I'm going to be plugging TVH Group and who we are and why it's beneficial for clients who do start off with a plan and working with us. Because again, there are other recommendations. The challenge is the follow through sometimes. So in working with us, for example, Ryan and I are certified cash flow specialists. Sometimes we can't, it's a bad outcome or not a favorable outcome for individuals because there's some cash flow challenges. So we will actually walk through specifically a behavioral cash flow plan to help them set up their financial plan. But we then uncover potential, maybe their liabilities are structured incorrectly. So they might require a financing professional. We won't send them to the bank for that. We have it in-house. We refer them to John and his team at TVH Mortgages. So a lot of times there have been clients who have freed up lots of cash flow, and then he would communicate back to us to say, okay, we freed up $3,000 a month in cash flow because we cleaned up a lot of debt and did some refinancing. You go ahead and do your part. Now we've uncovered $3,000 that we can help a client put a proper plan in place. Right? You talk about the accountant. Well, sometimes it's a lot more challenging dealing with a client's accountant because that accountant has their own practice and they're very busy. If they're working with David at TVH Accounting, guess what? Information's in-house. We're now collaborating as professionals on behalf of the client. On the legal side, we have that in place. Denis, on the wealth management side, you're in there to help people manage their investments and their assets to make sure that they do achieve the goals based on the plan that we've put in place for them. Ryan and I also on the insurance side. Sometimes there's insurance strategies that make sense. We can help them with. Sometimes there's estate planning tools, investments that we might utilize that's available. We do it all in-house with a team of professionals. So that's a shameless plug for a TVH group and why I think people should be working with us.
Well, I think you made an important point that we are willing to bring in other people. A lot of times I've seen in my career that somebody's coming in, they may be dealing with somebody that's only mutual fund licensed or only insurance licensed, but they're not offering, if you're mutual fund licensed and you can't offer insurance products, you're not going to mention insurance products. I know somebody whose clear goal was to bypass probate, and the advisor said, I only could do TFSA. She never mentioned seg funds. They weren't life insured. And then here you go. He didn't get the product he needed and wanted. And then when the person passed away, there they go, waiting during latter part of COVID, waiting forever for everything to go through. There was very little liquidity in the estate, and that would have worked wonders to, pay expenses, pay funeral, everything else. That's why it's important to have the right advisor, because it's the right advisor will know what can be offered, and if they can't do it, they will get somebody else to do it, preferably within the team, as opposed to not offering that solution at all, or not even knowing that solution exists. That's why you have to have somebody that's probably a little experienced, has dealt with a few things. We're all life insurance here. A lot of people aren't life insurance when it comes to on the security side. So it's important to know the products and to know if you can do it and if it's the right product for the client, to get somebody else to do it.
Yeah, I think TVH Group was founded by John and I back in 2008. And it was because we recognized that there was common biases in our industry. And I'll use John and I as the example. John, loves real estate, has always loved real estate, will continue to love real estate. And when we sat down, we were talking about, putting this company together and how we can help clients. The one point he made, which is correct, he said, Jim, if someone comes to me and says I have $100,000 to invest, well, I'm in real estate. I love real estate. So I'm probably going to, put them in something that's real estate based. Or if you spoke with a realtor, same thing. They're probably going to get you to buy a piece of property. And in working with someone like myself as an advisor, they're like, you're probably going to be biased towards some kind of portfolio solution or insurance solution. It's just, that's the way it's nature, human nature. That's the way it works, right? So we set out to start this company to ensure that we can eliminate all those biases. It's literally when a client comes in through our door and says, here's what my goals are. Here's what I like to achieve. This is what I have in terms of investments. What's the best for me? And now we have a team of professionals where we can eliminate that bias. The bias is really, leaning towards what the client needs ultimately. That's the way it should be, right? And if you like real estate, well, we have that. We have a solution. If you want portfolio management, we have that solution. If you want estate protection, we have that available to you. It might be a combination of 2 or 3 of those things, right? But that's really how TVH Group was founded, was based on the fact that we wanted to eliminate those biases. On a side note, what I will say is those firms have been available to clients who had at least $1 million to invest, right? So they're called family offices. So those have always been around, but they've never really been available to the regular Canadian, right? Who maybe they don't quite have that $1 million. We can bring on those clients and offer them all those unbiased solutions without having to come in with $1 million minimum. We've helped a lot of clients get to the $1 million minimum, right? They've started off with X amount of dollars. They didn't meet that minimum of $1 million threshold. But in working with us throughout the years, we've pointed them in the right direction. And guess what? Now they're high net worth clients as a result. So that's the reason why I love our group the way we're structured, is there is no bias in the recommendations that we make.
And I would
Ryan,
add,
I think, Ryan, you've probably felt that coming over and joining us, right?
Yeah. Well, I would just add is that because we're independent, we can use all the tools, all the resources of all the banks and the insurance companies, an ability to put the right plan together for each individual client or business owner, versus this is what I can use, which is something off the shelf from any institution. That's the only thing that I can use because they're pigeonholed. And you've shared the story too, is that When a client comes to you looking for a certain thing to help solve a certain problem, often it's not offered through certain institutions, or they can't recommend. And that was the benefit too of coming to the TVH group too, which was, and TVH Financial was looking and being like, I can use all of these. It's like, instead of just playing Tetris your whole life, now suddenly you're able to play many, many games of the 250 games that are available online, because there's so much choice out there. And for us to narrow it down, which again, our first and foremost for me has always been educating people about their money and making sure I'm helping them find the right solution, and that I'm not told that this is the only way I can make a decision or a certain product, which has made it a lot easier to help more people.
Yeah, I don't know how many times when I was working at the bank, you get head office coming down saying, hey, we want to increase market share in this product, so push, and then you would meet your targets and meet your goals. It's like, well, now we want to increase our market share in this product category and push. We don't have a head office telling us any of those things. Right? For us, we are the head office. And really our clients are the ones they are our clients. They're our bosses is the bottom line. That's who we work for. We don't work for anybody else above us. It's our clients is who they hire us to work for them and with them. And ultimately they're our employers. So I love the collaboration part of it. We've talked about why people should set up a financial plan. Denis, what steps should people take to get started on their financial plan?
Well, the one thing, and setting up a financial plan is really for, as we talked about before, for everybody. Whether you're young, you're old, you're in the middle, it is for everybody. But the one thing that it makes a financial plan unique is everybody's going to have a different everybody has different spending habits. When retirement, they all look at it differently. They'll need extra money. I know some people that they never made more than $60,000 a year, and they're retiring with near $1 million. So it's a matter of how much you want to spend and how much you can save will get that retirement in place. So when it comes to setting it up, it's just a matter of, I wouldn't say budgeting, but let's get the numbers and let's see what it looks like. It's really all about that. And then everything's going to come out. What are your goals? What do you want to achieve later on? Do you have any kids? Do you want to leave money to the kids? Funny, but, and sometimes sad, but I know a lot of people that I speak to that when I ask them, okay, how much you want to put aside for the kids? And all I get is they'll get what's left.
Yeah.
And while some people want to have a certain amount, whether it's for kids, whether it's for charity, it's a combination of things. So everybody is different. So it's a matter of getting people thinking in the right mindset and starting to gather that information. And then once we get them in the mindset and, we work with them and learn more about them, and there's an education process in the middle for both parties, as we learn more about each other and putting it together, it will be fine-tuned, especially if you start young. It will be there, where you want it to go, to be ready when you retire, where there's not that much surprises, as to say. Life events, health, and everything else is always a factor, but being prepared for it is a lot better than not being prepared for it.
And working with and putting together a financial plan for clients. For those who say they'll get whatever's left, we can help them, see what that looks like.
Yeah.
Right. And for clients to say, well, I want them to get the house and all these other things, and then they're barely surviving in retirement. Well, we can actually show them different strategies where they can utilize those assets for themselves and still leave a significant lump sum, maybe even tax preferred, tax preferred way. But we can help clients with whichever side of the coin that they fall on. Right? There is no right or wrong answer with that question. It's what is that you want, and we'll help you get there. That's the bottom line.
We'll make adjustments where needed. Any life event, a new child, death in the family, anything like that, we'll make adjustments. It's like a will. I always tell people when they're doing a will to review it every 5 years and make as if you're going to die next week. Don't. Everybody expects to, I'm going to live till 80, 90, or they have a number in mind. No, you got to make your will as if you're going to die next week. If anything changes, then you change the will. Similar to a financial plan, you do it until with all the known information, and then if anything changes, you adjust. That's why it's important to have, that's why they both fit hand in hand, the estate part and the while you're living part, because they do fit hand in hand, because it does affect directly your finances one way or another.
I love when clients say, "Well, I don't plan on dying till like I'm 85." It's like wonderful, and I don't laugh at it. I'm like, "Okay, great. So give me your date of birth again," and they'll give me their date of birth. I'm like, "Great. What's your date of death?" "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, you're confident that you're going to die at age 85. What date and what year is that going to happen?" And then they quickly realize, okay, we need to plan for the unexpected, right? Because that's the reality of life. It's unexpected. So yeah, so that's very important as well. I don't know. Is there anything else that we need to talk about?
Talk to an advisor. That's what we need to talk about. Is find an advisor, talk to two different advisors, see which one meshes best with your goals, listens to you, and has a process in place that is able to take you through the steps that you feel most comfortable with. Right? We have clients, Jim. I know that we in 3 meetings said and done, but there's clients that it's a big elephant. And the best way to eat an elephant is one chocolatey bite at a time.
Yeah. And the important part about the plan, I mean, there's our part of it, our role in it. But just like one of my favorite movies, Jerry Maguire, where he says, help me help you. We also do need the data, in order for us to make the proper recommendation. Like, I don't know how many times clients would come to me and say, well, I've got X amount and I want it for retirement, and make a recommendation. Like, that's just not enough information. We need so much more, right? That's the equivalent of going to the doctor's office saying, I feel pain, fix it. The doctor's going to say, well, where's the pain? Oh, is it constant? They have to determine, is it rest and that's going to cure it, or are you going to require like surgery? Like, there's so much information that we need to gather to make sure that we can do our job. So it's informing us in setting up the plan, give us all the information that we need so we can do our job. But throughout life, and I know, Ryan, I think you say it, that if there's a major life event, you should be in their top 5 of people to call, right? That's true. If you've changed jobs, if you changed homes, if you increase your debt, if your health has changed, like, there's just so many things. If you had a kid, like, these are very important things that we should be made aware of. And that's why it's important to not just establish a plan, but also when we reach out to you and we say, you know what, here's an invitation for us to do a progress review. Take that invitation. Take us up on it. It's 30 minutes. Let's just see where you're at, because sometimes we will uncover that there was a major life event that you haven't shared with us, and there's a huge financial impact, and we need to address that right away. Right. So keep us informed as well. And I would also say, Ron, you were saying to look for a financial planner or advisor. Come to us. This is what we do. This is what we do Absolutely. With a team of professionals. You don't have to try to source out your own professionals to work with you. Just give us a call at TVH, and we have the team of professionals that can help you from start to finish.
Yeah, always important to have the right advisor, to have the right solutions. If the person, we talked about before, if we can't do it, at least we know about it. You have to know about solutions. Some advisors may not offer a solution because they don't even know that solution exists. So I think that's why it's key to find the right advisor, to find the right solution. And if we can do it, we have other experts that can help us. And that's why, as you mentioned, family office with over $1 million plus, well, the family office have all the experts in there. And you need to have that, like we do now, to be able to offer the right solution, and not only the solution we know about.
So if anyone's interested in finding out more about the process, or if you feel like this is something that you definitely want to take on, you want to start and spend some time in doing so, I would encourage you to reach out to us. You could look up tvhgroup.ca. That'll bring you to the main TVH Group landing page. And what you'll see there is you'll find all the different units under TVH Group. So you'll see accounting and legal and TVH Wealth and financial. Reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to walk you through the process. You can look us up on our social media platforms as well. Obviously, we'd love to hear from you, so you can also call us. We do have phones as well, the old-fashioned method. So give us a call, 647-727-4668. If you're looking for to work with Denis specifically, you can go to tvhwealth.ca, Ryan and I, tvhfinancial.ca. So yeah, or if you just want to send a quick email, financial@tvhgroup.ca is a place to go. Guys, anything else, closing remarks, any final thoughts that we should discuss or share with clients?
I'll just recommend that people go to TVH Wealth and read the blog for what we just talked about. It's all in writing, a little more detail. We didn't touch on everything, but and then reach out if you have any questions.
Yeah, we didn't want to give it all away, but the blog post should be sent out by this Friday, so it'll be posted on TVH Wealth's website, your LinkedIn accounts as well, and we're also going to be sending it out by way of our News You Can Use e-newsletter.
Perfect.
I encourage people to read the blog post. Ryan, any final thoughts?
It doesn't cost anything to talk to us. Those initial conversations to get you started. And I think people are often thinking, oh, it costs me a lot of money. It doesn't cost you any money but your time, and good conversation to find out how we can get you on track. And there's something else I was going to say, and of course, I've forgotten it already. So
we'll edit it in afterwards. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Denis, once again, thank you for your insights on the topic. Ryan, thanks again for being my right-hand man and partner in crime. And until the next time, have a wonderful afternoon.
Why is it me? Why am I God? I still buy low, still sell.